Frost needles the dusk, turning breath to brittle lace along the riverfront. The converted warehouse exhales clove, myrrh and bruised pear sweetness, fermenting in a coffin. Director Luce stands inside the yawning door, silver beard catching gaslight, crucifix glinting where its arms taper to scalpel points. He murmurs, "Salvation through precision," while famine-scarred mothers shuffle forward. One presses a fevered daughter to her breast. The girl's giggle ricochets off the iron gate like a dropped marble. The gate shudders, releasing a breath of grave flowers from the staircase beyond. The mother's shawls are patched with flour sacks, the ink of distant mills still ghosting the threads. Their boots leave half-moon prints in rime that refreezes before the next heel lands. A toddler trails behind, thumb plugged in his mouth, eyes reflecting the warehouse's single lamp like wet coal. No one speaks above a whisper. The air feels too thin for vowels, as if one loud syllable might shatter the sky. Inside, the lobby's plank floor is strewn with crushed bay leaves, releasing camphor when stepped upon. A brass censer swings from a ceiling beam, chains creaking the way gallows do in seaside tales. Luce lifts the silver crucifix scalpel higher, letting candlelight slide along the blade's belly. He promises the mother's prayer-blessed science, voice velvet soft, the cadence of a lullaby that leaves bruises. They respond with fluttered eyelids and tightened grips on their children's shoulders, as if faith were a rope they could tie around the small bodies to keep them earthbound. The iron staircase door groans, a sound like a coffin lid giving way. From its gap exhales air, steeped in lilies, left too long in chapel vases, the sweetness threaded with something coppery. Riley, the fevered girl, jerks her head toward the scent, laugh rising again, thinner, spiraling into frequencies that make dogs unseen whimper. Her mother's palm clamps over the child's mouth, but the giggle leaks between fingers, staccato notes against the hymn that suddenly swells from below. The hymn is a cradle song every mother knows, yet the melody arrives too slow, each note stretched until the seams squeal. Beneath it, machinery knocks, 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, like a heart learning forgetfulness. The sound travels up through boot leather into shin bones, nesting there. Petal feels it while she crouches at the wharf's lip, needle flicking. She knots each stranger's name into a coat hem twice, once for hope, once for dread, thread squealing like gulls overhead. Coal oil tang drifts from watch lamps, painting halos that blur on river fog. A gaunt mother kneels, offering a boy whose black curls ribbon scarlet against parchment skin. Little's fingertip senses the tremor beneath. She knots thrice, sealing worry into cotton history. No ledger will ink. Her husband Larkin passes tin chicory, humming a Galway reel that sounds like rigging in rising gale. Snow begins erasing boot prints faster than they form, promising the river will remember nothing. Each flake is small and hard, a grain of erased name inside. Hymn swells, folding iron clatter inside its cadence. So even the docks forget labor's percussion. Machinery coughs beneath the floorboards, distant bees humming without visible motive. Father Cillian steps off the ferry, Vatican letter folded like a stiletto against his ribs. He tastes bitter almond riding the incense, memory already feathering at the edges. Luce greets him, quoting Aquinas about ordered love while guiding him toward the iron staircase. Cillian notes rivets thick as rosary beads, scents mildewed linen drifting from unseen wards below. He stores the impressions like specimens, cassock sweeping dust, doubt already sharpening on his tongue. Communion wine touches his lips. Vapor coils, carrying the same almond warning that needles the air whenever gates clang shut. The cup is tin, rim-dented like a thumbnail pressed too long against soft wood. He swallows, counts 3 heartbeats, forgets what he counted. Snow keeps falling, soft as absolution, soft as erasure. Outside, families camp on frost-slick boards, trading rosaries for Q tokens, murmuring Ave patterns. A boy with one shoe licks condensation from a piling, tasting salt and tar. His mother signs the miracle ledger. Ink sparkles wine dark, swallowing names like a hungry chalice. The child giggles again, higher, stranger, as if he already knows the gate prefers entrance over exits. The sound needles Cillian's spine. He clutches the hidden letter, parchment crinkling like dry bone. Petal stitches faster, recording the living before crimson silk might replace her cotton thread. River slaps pilings, keeping time with her needle, counting bodies she refuses to let vanish unspoken. Her thumb pads the knots, sealing each syllable with a drop of chicory that darkens like old blood. She knots the last name, knots her own vow, shifting from hopeful wife to mute archivist. Snow settles on her lashes. She does not blink, letting the flakes melt into witness. Luz closes the warehouse doors. Him cuts off mid-breath, leaving only the machinery's steady pulse beneath the boards. Counting bodies the river will soon forget. The lamp inside swings once, twice, then steadies, a single eye refusing to close. 2 weeks after the first miracle was posted on the cathedral door, dawn matins hum through the infirmary like a distant swarm. Violet glass in the narrow chapel window splits the rising sun into bruised amethyst bars that crawl across the ward floor and stripe the sleepers' blankets. Sister Ruth enters with the light, her veil a white sail skimming the cots. A spool of crimson silk rides inside her sleeve. She draws it out arm's length at a time, letting the cloth fall in quiet loops that look wet in the colored glare. No words accompany the tying. She lifts a wrist, judges the pulse with 2 fingers, knots, releases. The chosen patient wakes just enough to feel the soft tug, then sinks again beneath morphine breath that smells of bitter almond and winter apples. The rejected never know how close they came. They only dream of drowning while crimson flashes settle on their neighbor's skin. Between cots, she glides, shoes whispering over warped pine. A tremor travels her right hand, so slight it might be the building itself shivering against the river wind. She counts rosary beads inside her pocket. Click, click. The way clerks tally copper coins. And the rhythm steadies, the tremor for the next knot. 43 bracelets today, the silk growing thin as a vein near the spool's core. She notes the number on an ivory tally, lips moving without sound, then slips the ledger into her habit as though it were contraband. Outside, across the snow-dusted yard, the mission press thunders. Ink and coal oil mingle in clouds that taste of tar and hot pennies. The foreman's boy pins fresh broadsides to the warehouse gate. Miracles multiply. Submit your name. While the compositor resets type for tomorrow, licking lid letters before he drops them into chase. Paper stacks steam in the cold. Black letters still wet enough to smudge hopeful fingers. The waiting line snakes down the wharf. Pilgrims stamping rosaries into the ice like cribbage pegs, each bead a promise that their turn will come. Dr. Hale arrives with the shift change, city satchel slung crosswise to keep pickpockets away from his microscope. He pauses at the iron gate, watching Ruth glide back toward the chapel, crimson ribbon fluttering behind her like a cut artery. The orderly bars the threshold, palm open but empty. Hale asks for the sub-basement key. The orderly replies that medicine ends where faith begins. A steam hiss answers from somewhere below, carrying in the odor of carbolic and scalded linen. Hale's breath fogs his spectacles. When he wipes them clear, the orderly is gone and the gate locked. He turns instead toward the annex where the dead are kept, noting the fresh brass sheathing the morgue doors, screws so new the metal shavings still glitter on the threshold. He pockets one curl of brass, feeling it bite like a splinter of guilt. Inside the ward, Petal sits at Larkin's bedside, coat buttoned to her chin, despite the furnace clank in the pipes. She has been counting knots since the first dawn, knotting her own black thread for every disappearance. 42 loops now hem her coat lining, each tied when a red bracelet wearer vanished after nightfall. When Ruth approaches, Petal's fingers freeze on the needle. Larkin's wrist rises to meet the silk. The knot tightens like a wedding promise reversed, binding him to something till death do they part. This way, the voice model can learn both calm statements and more expressive moments. Petal hears the soft abacus click inside Ruth's sleeve, one bead for Larkin, and her own pulse answers. She does not cry out, she only threads the 43rd stitch through coarse wool twice for dread, then folds the hem flat so no one sees the record. Evening complaint drops its first bell into the frigid air when the night wagon rattles through the courtyard. Iron wheels strike frozen cobbles in an uneven march. Three knocks pause to jerk beneath a snow-dusted tarp, outlines the size of human bodies, but lacking the slack of sleep. An orderly walks alongside, lantern swinging, and mutters to the driver that the galvanic fit lasts 13 minutes exactly. Long enough for the courtyard to clear, short enough to avoid scandal. Snow begins to fall, thick flakes that melt on the top and seal the folds like wax on a letter no one plans to read. From the loading bay, Petal watches the wagon disappear toward the river fog. She thumbs the red thread she stole from Larkin's loop, feels warmth already leached by winter air. The thread goes into her hem, 44th witness, knotted silent while bells fade behind her. Snow keeps falling, soft as verdicts, erasing wheel ruts, erasing footprints, erasing every sound the warehouse will never confess. Snow feathers through cracked belfry louvers, dusting the nave in soft white powder that smells faintly of printer's ink and old candles. Cillian kneels alone, marble leaching heat through thin wool, breath clouding then vanishing as if the building itself inhales him. Tapers quiver, their flames thinning to insect legs trying to climb the dark, then giving up, sagging into molten horns. Luce glides forward, silk hem whispering over frost limestone, lifting the chaste cup until a bitter almond breath unfurls above the wine like a poison halo. Cillian's tongue numbs before the rim touches it, as though scent alone can anesthetize belief. He swallows, lukewarm varnish coats his throat, faith colliding with chemistry behind his sternum, each heartbeat a courtroom gavel. Organ pipes exhale a kyrie that rattles stained glass. Frost ferns across martyr portraits, blanching their painted eyes until they look freshly blind. Snowflakes hiss against the silver, turning instantly to almond-scented steam that crawls under his collar and camps at the base of his skull. Cillian clamps Aquinas in his mind, but syllables skid, letters dripping like hot solder off a ruined circuit board. The nave tilts a hair's breadth, just enough to slide hope sideways, like a negative slipping from its sleeve. Behind the lattice, unseen tongues mutter creed in grey unison, the sound of river water over locked gates. Between murmurs Sister Ruth's sleeve grazes his, releasing coal oil vapor from ink-dark cuff. She leans, breath warm, ticking 213 against his ear, like winding a clock that only counts backward. Remember the interval, she murmurs, voice marrow-close digits burrow, lodging behind his eyes, replacing lost scripture with steel type. Cillian feels the count echo in his molars, a pulse refusing amen. Ruth's fingers tremble as they retreat, yet she palms a scarlet filament no longer than a heartbeat, penance for a tally only she can read. Snow keeps falling through the vents, erasing color, softening edges, making prisoners of the congregation in shifting white bars that dissolve the moment they solidify. When the rite ends, Lou steadies Cillian's elbow, murmuring gratitude for the visitor's dedication while steering him toward the sacristy door. His knees answer like bags of mercury, heavy yet rolling, carrying him down a spiral stair wedged between him and furnace breath. Iron steps quiver under coal oil lamps that paint each stone with trembling gold, the light so thin it feels boiled rather than burned. Green light throbs below, a submerged aurora leaking from copper pipes, matching the 13-beat shudder he now senses through the rail. The hymn above stretches, slowing until heartbeat and machinery share one bronchial rhythm. Cillian lifts the spectroscope camera hung round his neck, but the lens fogs, chemistry balking at sacrament. He lowers it, choosing instead to pocket a curled copper shaving snagged on the railing, cold-proof against dogma. Snow outside has already refilled the alley ruts, erasing every pilgrim footprint, while choir crescendo masks the creak of a departing wagon. Canvas jerks beneath its top in galvanic hiccups. 13 measured twitches, counting themselves against the cold. Loose smiles, explaining transfiguration, yet the smile ticks like a stopwatch gauging yield. Cillian feels belief crack along an invisible seam, wine leaking from a fractured cup. The stairwell narrows, exhaling mildewed linen, the smell of baptismal cloth left too long in wet earth. It wraps his throat, urging cough, but he swallows the reflex, tasting still the almond residue that refuses to fade. At the bottom a hatch hums, organ deep, hymn and engine, fused into one respiration. Luce unlatches it, gestures Cillian through, then folds the world shut above him. Upper music thins to a memory trapped in wood, and the green pulse becomes his only psalm. Cillian descends the final treads, mercury legs shivering toward the glow where miracles are soldered and salvation weighed. Copper shaving warms against his palm, turning testimony into talisman. He steadies the useless camera like a rosary of glass, choosing measurement over benediction. Somewhere ahead, galvanic valves hush in 13-beat breaths, matching the numbers Ruth etched behind his eyes. Snow taps the roof slates far above, erasing every trace that he or the wagon ever passed. Only the bitter almond scent remains loyal, sharpening each time he inhales the charged dusk below. January coal powder night sifts through cracked slates, needling petal awake on the charity cot. Frost feathers the inside of the tin roof, ticking like distant typing. She waits until the ward's breathing evens, then slides free, bare soles kissing icy planks. Wool shawl smolders with frost. Laudanum sighs drift behind her, incense too sweet to trust. Riverfront iron hisses as the night wagon rolls. Two horses steam, blinkers painted black so even they can't see what they haul. Canvas top snaps once, twice 13 times, each jerk timed to a distant chapel organ only the hidden wires can hear. Petal crouches behind a dock crane, sewing needle ready, counting every convulsion until the cloth lies still and a whiff of bitter almond licks her tongue like a coin of forbidden communion. She pricks her thigh through the skirt. Crimson blooms, warm enough to prove her alive. The driver, scarfed, goggled, never looks back. He reins toward a cold chute alley where the lamppost glass is already starred from last week's stone throw. Inside the warehouse, organ pipes moan, turning the loading bay into a nave of echoing doubt. Bundles twitch again, violet sparks winking beneath frost. Petal sketches 13 pulses across her palm, a rosary turned inside out. A bell across the river tolls 3. The clang presses against her ribs, reminding her of Larkin's unfinished whistle. Snow feathers her lashes, melts, and drips off her chin. She refuses to name it, crying. The tarp flaps shut, wheels sing like distant skates, and her footprints freeze behind her, sealing proof that someone living watched the dead keep moving. At dawn, coal oil fog rolls off the water, swallowing cemetery iron and turning lamplight the color of spoiled pumpkin. Hale's breath rasps as he slips the sexton a folded sovereign. The man pockets the coin, nods toward a fresh pine box balanced on grain sacks, mutters blessings cost extra. Hale says nothing, only levers the lid until nails squeal. Instead of bone knocking, stones clack like hollow dice, river gravel slick as confession, spilling across his boot tops. He weighs the coffin on a rusted grain scale. The beam halts halfway, lighter than a child. He stops counting pebbles at 47, the number feeling as pointless as an atheist prayer. A sealed letter waits on the gig seat, violet wax stamped with the hospital crest. The note denies his autopsy request and trusts he will keep silent. He folds the paper until the seal splits, then tucks a single wet gravel chip into the locket holding his consumptive daughter's portrait, snapping the clasp like evidence condemned. Dockside taverns open before the sun can bleach the sky. Inside, Cole Hever's nurse free laudanum vouchers issued by the almoner's wife. Rumors germinate between slurped spoons of barley broth. Cures pressed overseas by the crate. Bodies sold by the stone. Silence bought by the drop. A stevedore laughs until his stitches pop, pink serum threading down his wrist. No one comments. They all bleed somewhere. The thread tightens around her knuckles, refusing to knot or break. Sister Ruth stands at the stairfoot, fingers flicking black yarn beside the ledger, mouth shaping 42 instead of 41. Bitter almond drifts from the sacristy, tasting of Larkin's last breath. Petal understands the lullaby has already turned dirge. She carries the coil to the workroom, seats herself beneath the gas lamp, and begins a new line of stitches, each puncture echoing the note Larkin never learned. Between knots, she mouths a vow the river will not swallow. Every name, every thread, every hollowed cot will be worn like a funeral brooch at the city's throat. Dawn finds her still sewing, collar damp with steam and tears, mildewed linen now laced with grave flowers drifting from the delivery chute, the scent clinging like a promise of reckoning. Across town, Hale stands outside the charity ward gates, hands too cold to feel the iron. He pictures his daughter drawing her last ribbon breath while crates of stones clatter toward the harbor. Atheist guilt calcifies into vengeance. He imagines future invoices, stamped not in wax, but in the same river gravel that filled the coffin. Somewhere a whistle rises, Petal's unfinished lullaby carried on coal smoke. He does not know the tune, yet its minor third hooks his marrow all the same. Soot dawn bruises the riverfront, violet seeping between frost-split bricks. Iron cot wheels rattle upstairs. Riley's body arches, bowed like yew drawn for war. Black fingernails shed paper petals, cracking as they fall. Grey flowers flood the ward, syrupy rot twining with organ wheeze. Beneath parchment skin, violet threads pulse, sketching lace of living vein. 13 twitches, no more. The final jerk snaps, breath like ice. Silence clangs, iron on iron. His mother staggers, mouth opening on a swallowed cry. Director Luce lifts a scalpel fused to a silver crucifix, declaring transfiguration. While eyes follow the glittering blade, his free hand palms enamel tag, 71 into his cassock. Cornea's viable orderlies wheel the cot toward the lift. The lid drops, cutting grey flower perfume with the coffin's hollow thud. Luce leans close to the mother, velvet murmuring Aquinas, promising numbers raised in glory. She wilts, belief smothering grief. Steam hisses from laundry vents, tasting of coal oil. Killian kneels at the sacristy sluice, retching violet bile threaded bright with almond. He swipes a spectroscope slide across the bronze film inside the chalice, trapping guilt like a pressed bloom. Across the passage, Petal crouches on a cedar bench, hemming Riley's linen cuff. Needle flashes, she winces, pricking her pad, knotting scarlet inside the fabric where inspectors never pry. She whispers the boy's name, stitching memory to cotton, while the morgue chute exhales grave flowers. Cillian crosses the threshold, cassock cuffs dripping wine. Evidence passes from altar glass to cotton fold, silent covenant sealed by copper scent. Their footsteps sink, two heartbeats unpicking the miracle ledger one thread at a time. Word of transfiguration travels faster than tide, racing along frost-slick wharf planks. Mothers swarm the hospital steps, cheeks river clay pale, fevered kin burning brighter than hymn brass. Luce appears on the iron balcony, silver beard, catching blood-rising sun, promising multiplied miracles. Sister Ruth's rosary snaps, beads skitter like guilty thoughts. A waiting list scroll unfurls, ink still wet, names pooling toward the cellar. Mr. Cask counts crates below, lips moving as pounds of flesh convert to export profit. Crimson silk threads flutter from chosen wrists, tickets to the humming staircase. Inside the dispensary, bottles clink, labels curling with bitter almond. The queue lengthens faster than basilica bells can toll. Dawn mist swallows the far shore, erasing the line between water and sky, between mercy and merchandise. Hale watches from the open boneyard gate, river stone heavy inside the locket against his chest. He tastes the same almond trace drifting from chimney stacks, linking Riley's transfiguration to coffins he has weighed. His fingers drum the gate rail, calculating risks of stepping forward. He recalls the denied autopsy request, the sexton's twitching brow, and decides silence profits no one. Turning up his collar, he follows a slow hearse wagon creaking toward the mortuary tunnel. He means to see whether tonight's corpse departs full weight or light as stoneware. Below, Petal unpicks a seam of her skirt, adding Riley's name beside Larkin's cotton. Whispers, absorbing tears she refuses to shed. She knots the red coil Larkin left, tethering resolve. Footsteps echo. Cillian returns, sliding the chalice-stained slide between her stitches. No words pass. Breath plumes mingle, carrying mildewed linen from the laundry shaft. Together, they count threads, counting lives, counting chances. In the counting house across the yard, loose total tags, export schedules tighten. Eyes are wanted in Calcutta, hearts in Vienna. He dips his quinoline pen, marking prices beside parish names. Steam coils hiss again, coal oil scent layering over ink. He murmurs a single line to the ledger, salvation sells, then snaps the book shut. Outside, the river answers with one slow foghorn, as though the water itself bargains for the dead. Lilac shadows creep along the alley as Hale slips the lock, iron rasping like breath caught in a cracked bellows. The morgue door sighs, exhaling quicklime and coal oil, amber lamplight revealing shelves already swept clean of flesh. He scrapes white grit into a vial. The glass squeals, counting grains that smell of drowned candles and bitter almond. Behind him the river answers with a foghorn, bargaining for cargo already boxed. Hale pockets the vial, threads the lane, coat pockets rattling with emptier coins. His knuckles throb from the pick's chill. Every footstep on the cobbles feels louder than the night itself. Yet no lamp flares, no constable stirs. Town sleeps under a quilt of coal smoke, dreaming of profitable delusions. A warehouse crane swings overhead, chains dripping dew that reeks of mildewed linen. At the cemetery wicket, he trades the sexton a sovereign for silence. The gate lifts without complaint. 13 fresh mounds gleam under frost, lilac petals scattered like excuses, spade teeth bite sod, stones clatter, drumming hollow against his ribs. 6 coffins surrender only river rock, no marrow, no rot, just ballast wearing pine masks. The 7th lid cracks, river water sluices out, carrying the same bitter almond scent. Hale's pulse stutters, no flesh, no bone, only geology masquerading as grief. He photographs nothing. Memory must serve where evidence cannot breathe. The sexton mutters a psalm, more habit than hope, breath clouding like conscience for sale. Hale promises coins he no longer owns, knowing guilt weighs less than evidence. Inside the crematorium mouth, furnace doors yawn, singed paper wings litter the grate. He snatches a scrap. Medical curios, urgent Vienna, London ink has browned at the edges, as if ashamed. A second fragment flutters. Thoracic sets female, age 12, classified appendix. The heat has curled the numbers, but destinations survive, smug and intact. Gravel crunches, the mayor's clerk arrives, emerald gloves bright as accusation, folding silence into an inner pocket already fat. The man never speaks. He simply waits until Hale's gaze drops, then replaces the furnace latch with a soft click that feels like a cell door. The clerk advises Hale to chase rats if he craves anatomy. Diocesan voters frighten the mayor more than empty graves. Lantern light retreats between leaning stones. The sexton reburies stones, erasing night's arithmetic beneath clerk supervision. Morning fog lifts enough to show Hale his reflection in a puddle. A man marked inconvenient, pockets empty, proof entombed. Somewhere beyond the iron gate, His daughter coughs in her hospital cot. He hears it in the hollow of his skull, a wet tearing sound that matches the tear in the cemetery's logic. He limps toward the hospital rail, hymn sheet folded like a bandage inside his coat. Each step counts heartbeats until solstice. Dawn strikes brass, and a red ribbon trembles where Petal tied it at dawn. Silent flare for a morgue keeper turned conspirator. Hale's breath fogs. The ribbon flutters as though the iron rail exhales. Bitter almond drifts again, thin, sweet foretelling. Cillian appears, cassock hem sodden, eyes brighter than the bead of sky-piercing fog. Keys slide from Hale's palm to his iron-kissing iron, secular science bowing to sacred risk. The priest's fingers are colder than the metal, evidence of a night spent wrestling laudanum dreams into submission. Hale notices the tremor, but says nothing. Need overrules reputation. Petal steps from coal-shed shadow, unfolding sailcloth etched with survivor names. Her lullaby threads each syllable into the damp morning. She hums a tune learned beside cargo holds, pacing out the rhythm of shackles. Cillian murmurs that summer solstice leaves 3 weeks before the next chartered crate sails. His voice cracks on the word chartered, as if the Vatican seal already weighs more than conscience. Hale nods, already tasting lime and river water, calculating fever curves against tide tables. The trio stand so close, their exhalations mingle. 3 varieties of dread, forming one visible cloud. Petal binds their wrists with leftover crimson thread, a vow tighter than any chapel oath. The knot presses Hale's skin like a brand he cannot show. They separate before foundry whistles wake, each carrying the same refrain. Bring the ledger, bring the proof, bring the living out of stone coffins. Somewhere inside, Sister Ruth loosens a medicine cabinet screw, trading complicity for possibility. Her fingers work by memory. She never looks down, humming the same lullaby Petal carries, notes slipping through keyholes like contraband. The river keeps bargaining for the dead, but 3 silhouettes now hold counteroffers, and dawn tastes less like surrender, more like borrowed time. Hale pockets the ribbon, the hymn sheet, the vial of quicklime, relics of a faith measured in grams. Behind him, the morgue lock clicks shut, yet the echo seems softer, as if the building itself doubts its own authority. He walks toward the hospital, rehearsing the lie he will tell the night nurse, while overhead the first tram bell rings an uncertain note, half warning, half summons. The thunder moon hangs low, a rusted coin pressed against the coal smoke. Cillian squats on the lip of the chute, cassock kilted to his knees, the black cloth drinking moonlight until it shines like oil. He inhales once, tasting iron filings and summer storm, then drops. The chute takes him like a confessor. Iron throat, iron tongue, iron judgment. Every rivet he brushes sighs. His shoulder strikes a bend. Pain flares, is filed away. He lands in cinders that crunch like thin ice, knees folding until the collarbone almost kisses the ground. 3 doorways gape ahead, unmapped, exhaling violet with the rhythm of hidden lungs. Inside the first chamber, copper coils braid across the ceiling like inverted tree roots. Each coil threads into a bell jar. Each jar shelters a heart the size of a child's fist. They shudder together, systole matched to the hum of galvanic batteries stacked like hymnals. Violet arcs snap between valves, illuminating brief interiors. Auricles slick as slugs, ventricles taut as drumskin. No blood drips. The hearts are pickled, clear fluid gelled around them, yet they beat as if memory alone keeps time. Cillian lifts the camera, one click. The shutter flutters like a moth wing. The bulb blooms white, freezes a heartbeat in silver. He moves along the trestle, gloved fingertips grazing parchment, ledgers steeped in chemical breath. The ink columns read like a butcher's hymn: weight, moisture, potassium yield, serotonin quotient. 213 names, each reduced to grams of usable grace. A residue bead, amber and thick as old honey, clings beside the tally. He tilts the page, lets the droplet slide into a glass vial, corks it, slips the vial inside his sleeve. where the pulse of his own artery drums against it. From the rear of the chamber comes a coffin-long crate bound with copper straps. The lid jerks, a fractional lift, then settles. Tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap, tap, tap. The rhythm lodges in his teeth. Morse for help, or for hello, or for heresy, he cannot decide. Thin wires trail from the crate to the hearts. A private telegraph where every beat is a letter he has no cipher to read. He photographs the crate. Flash powder, fizzing. Then hears the scuff of rubber soles beyond the hiss of batteries. Two orderlies drift through the far doorway, white masks sealed to their faces like blank pages. Syringes glint in their hands, barrels labeled ecstasis in crimson script. Overhead, a third figure crouches on a catwalk, rifle glinting. The bolt clacks, a metallic amen echoing down the rafters. Cillian steps back. A jar brushes his shoulder, bathing the torn collar in violet. The cloth frays, threads parting like old vows. He palms the vial again, thumbs the cork free, and lobs it toward the orderlies. The glass cracks on a battery corner. Amber vapor billows, sweet and acrid. One orderly inhales, staggers, syringe tumbling. The needle skates across Cillian's sleeve, snags the black weave, rips a strip away. The second orderly fires his rifle. The bullet sinks past an ear, smashes a jar. Clear fluid showers, carrying the heart which slaps the floor, still beating, cables sparking like severed nerves. Violet light sputters, shadows leap. The first orderly drops to his knees, mask fogged pink from coughing. Cillian slips beneath a workbench. Rough planks scrape his spine. Sawdust clings to sweat. He smells coal oil turning rancid. Then the alkaline sting of soap from a laundry chute behind the bench. He wriggles inside, cassock snagging, buttons popping. The duct narrows. He shucks the garment until only the collar remains, a broken halo around his neck. Behind him, the survivor climbs the catwalk, chanting psalms between wheezes, repeating verse numbers as if they can stitch torn lungs. The duct spills into a vertical shaft lined with wet linen. He slides down rope-burned sheets, lands in a runoff tunnel ankle-deep with stormwater. The air tastes of soot and bitter almond. Thunder rolls overhead, each crack a chapter heading in a sermon he no longer believes. He hugs the ledger photographs to his chest. The amber vial knocks against his ribs, tapping alive, alive. 93 rungs of iron ladder later, he shoulders a rusted grate and crawls into fog so thick it muffles the moon. Hale's side door stands 4 yards off, paint blistered like eczema. Cillian's knock at 4 a.m. is soft, a damp match against conscience. The panel swings. Hale appears in nightshirt and brass goggles, microscope raised like a glass sensor. No word passes. Hale sniffs the mildewed linen, clinging to the fugitive, steps aside. Scalpels glint on the hall stand like silver crucifixions awaiting heresy. Between them, the pact forms without amen. Data versus scalpel, proof versus flesh. Far above the roofline, a window scrapes open. Loose, sleepless, draws a silver knife across leather, murmuring the psalm of the fool who denies what his own heart already knows. City bells begin, summoning watchmen to confession disguised as manhunt. Frost feathers the warehouse gutters as Cillian's soles meet yesterday's warmth hiding beneath the cobbles. Gray flowers ride the exhalations of dawn, a funereal perfume drifting from the chapel's cracked rose window. Hale wraps the walnut microscope tube against his thigh, counting marshals by the steam of their breathing. 12 silhouettes glide into formation. Truncheons drum leather, the cadence of hearts refusing to quit. A captain folds gloved fingers one by one, timing splintering oak with the sun's first blush. Cillian thumbs the brass spectroscope on his chest. Glass captures sunrise like a vow already fractured. At the rear door, a marshal muffles iron with flannel. Silence swells until ears ring. 3 fingers rise, fold, vanish. Oak erupts inward. Splinters shower the nave like pale confetti. A hidden organ swallows a chord that never resolves. Its tremor slides beneath boots like guilt. Marshals flood the aisle, rifle barrels glinting like ashamed icicles. Orderlies freeze mid-step, cruciform scalpels trembling across white smocks, bitter almond billows up from the communion rail, braiding with gun oil and incense. An amber haze ghosts off Cillian's coat, reminding every lung of the night before. Sister Ruth stands beside iron stairs, black beads rattling a Morse she never learned. She offers her wrists before iron bracelets click, as if handcuffs were rosary and counting might forgive. Her lips keep shaping 213, the tally threading through silence. Director Luce backs toward the choir loft surgery, silver beard flickering in lantern glow. Marshals tear velvet curtains. Bottled hearts bob like dark cherries waiting to be named. Eyeballs rest on silver trays, pupils still wide from borrowed wonder. An invoice flutters. 13 pairs pediatric lungs, crated for Hamburg, payment on delivery. Copper coils hum below, keeping severed tissue electrically polite. Hale edges forward, microscope clenched like a sidearm. He notes quicklime vats, coffin crates child-sized, stamped with ecclesiastical wheel. Luce is pinned against a reliquary shelf. A crucifix scalpel snaps between his manacled palms. The silver handle spins, ringing across flagstones like a bell that forgot its tongue. He smiles, murmurs data sanctified cannot bleed. Breath fogs as sunrise bleeds through colored glass. Upstairs, the organist lifts both hands. The last chord dies unfinished. Marshals drag Luce past the altar where Ruth kneels, wrists ink black, lips still counting. She lifts a chalice, swallows leftover communion wine. Bitter almond stings, like funeral spices. At the 13th count, her shoulders jerk. Convulsions ripple, as if each bead knots a nerve. Her heels drum flagstones. Ledger pages flutter from her sleeve like white moths. Outside, the police wagon waits, iron door gaping like a tabernacle emptied of bread. Chains tighten, wheels creak. Across the river, the warehouse bell answers with one dull toll. Cillian lowers his camera, coal oil scent drifting from the hot plate. He wonders whose name will be the last entry never spoken. He pockets the amber vial. Sunrise glints inside like a captive dawn. Mildewed linen rises from captured sheets, stacked near the ambulatory, reminding every marshal of sick rooms and mercy gone wrong. A marshal hands Hale a velvet drawstring pouch. Inside, a red ribbon curls like a vein remembering color. Hale lifts it, eyes Cillian, and slips it into evidence. No words pass. The ribbon speaks for a child who once tied a birthday braid. Sister Ruth's heels finally still. A physician leans, whispers she is gone. Cillian exhales, feeling 13 minutes hammer inside his own ribs. The warrant captain calls for stretchers, for seals, for photographs before frost melts. Luce watches from the wagon window, calm as stone, repeating a psalm number beneath his breath. Hale climbs the iron stairs, noting every battery, every bell jar. He murmurs an inventory so quiet it sounds like prayer. Cillian follows, cassock torn, collar gone. The broken halo aches against his throat. He pictures 213 names marching toward light. Imagines each child meeting dawn unchained. Marshal snap labels, bag vials, lift crates. Sunrise climbs higher, turning frost to steam, turning evidence to promises. Somewhere below, copper coils cool, their galvanic pulse finally still. Mildewed linen scent fades, replaced by morning air that tastes almost clean. Cillian steps outside. Bells across the city answer one another, sounding less like triumph, more like warning. He fingers the amber residue, feels its warmth, and wonders how many sunrises will pass before the next bell tolls for them. Rain needles the riverbank, churning last autumn's quicklime into grey porridge that sucks at boots and swallows hems. Shovels bite swollen lids, stones rattle out like dice thrown by vengeful ghosts. The crowd moans, a hymn no choir ever taught, rising with coal oil drifting off upstream barges. A mother presses wool to her mouth, tasting grey flowers on the mist. Stones skitter downhill, skipping like missed heartbeats, skipping like lies losing balance. Somewhere a marshal breathes evidence, the word fragile as wet paper, yet heavier than any casket. Bitter almond ghosts along the river, promising water will remember this weight even if ledgers burn. Dawn cobbles glisten as newsboys fling sheets like startled pigeons. Headlines smear beneath damp soles. A lullaby printed beside neat columns reading pediatric hearts. Pair of eyes, wharfmen pause mid-yoke, read, then let hospital-sealed crates thud untouched. A crane whistle screeches. An altar bell stuck in denial. Emerald flashes at the gangway. Mr. Cask, cravat snapping like a pennant of retreat. His footfalls drum the deck. None meet his gaze, each man coiling rope that was never uncoiled. Steam sighs carrying grey flowers out to sea. On shore, hawkers refold unsold editions, hiding export invoices inside sports pages. Inside the courthouse, rain taps walnut panels, matching the judge's hurried pulse. Petal rises, ledger unfurling across the rail like a linen river. She names each vanished soul in lullaby murmur, thread count precise, while bitter almond coils from Lucy's shackled beard. Behind her sits the cured widower, skin glowing, pupils drinking borrowed light, lungs ticking like borrowed clocks. The pen scratches, louder than hymn breath. Gavel meets hardwood. The sentence falls. Dawn hemp, a gasp swells, half prayer, half sob, then steadies into the same stubborn hymn. Petal's fingers keep moving, knotting red thread around her thumb. Promising union. In the rear pew, Dr. Hale studies the glowing man, noting how galvanic grace still twitches beneath translucent skin. He snaps his microscope case shut, deciding testimony of flesh outweighs scripture of machines. Bailiffs drag loose past the rail. Aquinas tumbles from his lips in trembling Latin, sanctified data, but no one answers. The hymn braids through gallery benches where survivors finger crimson cords, twisting outrage into a banner destined for factory gates. Coal oil lamps hiss, sharpening resolve. Petal steps down, ledger pressed to her chest like armor stitched from names. Outside, rain softens into mist, yet the hymn keeps rising, tied against warehouse walls. Grey flowers bruise the wet stone steps with every footfall of the leaving crowd. Between courthouse and river, the first sapling hole is punched into the sod, waiting beside 213 ranks of accusatory stones. A marshal lifts a single stone, turns it, finds the tiny initial R scratched underneath. He sets it upright at the lip of the hole, a headstone for a tree not yet planted. The hymn falters, then regathers, carrying the scent of bitter almond up the bank and into the waking city. The sewing circle meets that night in the abandoned shirt factory, windows patched with flour sacks. Petal unwraps her ledger, spreads it across a cutting table scarred by old shears. Women file in, shoes still caked with river silt. They bring needles, thimbles, and the smell of wet wool. No one lights the main lamps, only one kerosene lantern, turned low, so shadows stitch themselves to rafters. Petal hands out lengths of red thread, one span per name. The room fills with tiny sighs as cotton passes from palm to palm. A treadle machine stands ghost-like in the corner, flywheel glinting whenever someone shifts. They begin to quilt a banner, each patch a pocket sized for a heartbeat, and every stitch is whispered like a vow to keep the dead from sliding back into the river. By midnight, the quilt is half a shroud, half a sail. Someone suggests a union badge, a tiny red R embroidered on every collar. No one argues, the idea settles over the table like shared warmth. A child coughs in the alley. The women pause, listening, then resume, faster, as if needles could outrun sickness. Petal's thumb is bleeding, a bead bright as sealing wax. She presses it onto the corner of the banner, leaving a fingerprint that looks like a small closed eye. Outside, rain starts again, drumming on tin vents, keeping time with the treadle's phantom rhythm. Across town in the new lung ward built from auctioned crates, Hale's daughter sleeps between sheets stamped with faint hospital codes. Fluorescent chloride glows in glass tubes, painting a face the color of early dawn. Nurses move on rubber soles, afraid to wake the children who breathe through nickel valves that click like distant typewriters. A janitor wipes export stamps off the floor tiles, but ink keeps blooming, refusing to vanish in the hallway. A single emerald cravat, washed and disinfected, hangs drying on a rack, its color leached to pale seawater. Science saved them, yet the ward smells of bitter almond whenever heaters cough. Weeks later, when the gallows go up on the old parade ground, the city papers print Petal's testimony in full. Column after column, lullaby lyrics running like a border of black lace. Dock workers fold the pages into paper boats and float them downstream, each boat carrying a matchstick effigy in an emerald scarf. None reach the sea. They sink near the bend where 213 stones now stand in crooked rows, half sunk in grass. Saplings sprout between them, roots clutching the initials carved by steady hands. Every spring, the trees will drop narrow leaves shaped like tiny coffins, and children will collect them, believing they are boats meant for quieter rivers. December mud steams, leaking warehouse ghosts and clove. Boot heels tap 213 chalk crosses, while blank brass plates glint like frostbitten mirrors. Petal steps first, carpetbag of saplings knocking her knee, grave flower vapor sugaring every breath. She kneels at hole 37, same pit that swallowed Riley's small coffin 3 nights earlier. The ground there is darker, as though the soil remembers the weight of secret lime. Cillian arrives collarless, mud-kissing rolled sleeves, cassock hem drinking sludge like returning ink. He knots a faded red ribbon round the naked root ball, murmuring so low only bark hears. The ribbon once circled Riley's wrist in the mortuary photograph. Now it flutters, a tiny pennant of apology. A distant choir rehearses Lenten hymn. The tune wobbles between traffic clatter and river hush. Laborers pause, hats crushed in sooty hands, watching living wood slide into ground once packed with stone-filled caskets. Bitter almond drifts anyway, stubborn aftershave of cyanide rumors nobody dares name. Petal presses loam round the trunk, fingers trembling like needles through thick wool, feeling the ledger of absence throb. Each grain of soil seems to hum the syllables of names she was forced to leave blank. Larkin follows, coat unbuttoned, borrowed spade, balanced like a relic across blistered palms. He lowers sapling 42, roots dripping winter river water, imagining Riley humming beneath. The water smells of iron and old coins. The river's own accounting. Brass plate settles faceless, reflecting pale sun and paling fences spear shadow. Cillian stays kneeling, palm flat over ribboned root, sealing an unofficial covenant with chilled earth. Snowflakes spiral early, hissing as they kiss bare metal. The scent of mildewed linen rises from Petal's coat, a ghost of the hospital sheet she refused to burn. Hale arrives last, pockets chiming with miniature files finer than sewing needles. He offers the tools without flourish, explaining their medical steel edges can bite brass deeper than guilt. Petal accepts, feeling balance shift. Craft and science now share the same wooden handle. Together they decide carved letters will stay hidden beneath sackcloth until council votes on memorial charter. Silence becomes strategy. Anonymity their shield against forgetting. Across the river, the Vatican's telegram reaches the chancery. Investigative protocols adopted, secular oversight mandated for every faith-based ward. The courier slips on thaw ice, swears softly, unaware he carries the end of an era. Snow keeps erasing footprints, promising to return tomorrow and tomorrow after, until the city chooses to read trembling metal. Petal teaches Larkin to brace the chisel with his thumb, to let the hammer fall like heartbeat, not verdict. Shavings curl away, bright as infant hair. She whispers Riley's full name into the brass dust, so the air will remember if the plate ever vanishes. Larkin carves slower than growth rings, 1 letter per season. Gilt gift of life weighs every breath. When the first snowflake lands on the fresh-cut sea, it melts into a tear-shaped punctuation. Cillian rises at last, knees creaking louder than frost-split branches. He tells the illustrator setting tripod on blood-stained ground. Memory, not miracle. Snow swallows, syllables whole. The illustrator pockets charcoal, smelling coal oil on his cuffs, and walks backward, sketching the silhouette of the man who once wore a collar. Twilight folds the sky into violet parchment. Peat smoke climbs, carrying coal oil ghosts from passing tugboats. Petal guides Larkin's chisel. Second letter begins, a soft sea curling like a sleeping infant. Each brass shaving spirals to the ground, bright as confetti, bright as bone fragments never catalogued. When burlap covers the newborn glyphs, knots whisper like rosary beads sliding through dying fingers. In the morning, reporters will demand statements. Hale will answer with graphs instead of psalms. His daughter's portrait already replaced by a group photograph of survivor families on his office wall. Luce, elsewhere, executes with smile, claiming martyrdom for progress. Last words, data sanctified echo as cautionary epitaph. But tonight, there is only the hush of saplings breathing. Green shoots already spear upward beside ribboned bark. Frost-nipped but upright, trembling with sap and stubborn resurrection. Gray flowers breathe underneath, faint, persistent, sacred, refusing to let ground forget the cargo it once concealed. Snow keeps falling, erasing color, erasing guilt. Yet beneath whitening weight, small fists of leaves keep opening, counting themselves against the coming dark.